Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Raj Sukumar, Vice President Technology Services for Persistent Systems in Europe. And the topic of our discussion today is delivering the fintech strategy of differentiation by achieving a customer segment of one. Today, I'm joined by Ryan Joyce, Head of Fintech UK at Salesforce, James Barker, Commercial Director, EMEA at Mambu, and Jaydeep Dog, General Manager, BFSI, Persistent. I'm sure everyone would agree when I say this. Banking and fintech industry in general is no longer being disrupted, but it has already been disrupted. Just in the past year, UK neobanks have almost tripled their customer base, growing from under 8 million customers to over 20 million. Now, with the markets opening up and the regulations getting more fintech friendly, this is already a crowded space. So how can organizations differentiate themselves? And how can they do that with agility and speed? With that, let me turn it over to Ryan Joyce to share his point of view.
Thank you, Raj. Great to be here. So why Salesforce and Mambu? Simply put, our customers recognize the powerful combination of having a best-in-class CRM platform and a best-in-class cloud banking platform. We have shared customers such as N26, Oak North, and New10 that have all launched and come to market in the last 3 to 5 years with exciting new propositions to really transform the experience for consumers and small business owners. When we survey our customers, 90% of them now say that they expect a digital banking experience. So in order to achieve that, there are some key principles that we need to be aware of. You know, it's super important to have an enriched 360 view of the customer and drive a seamless journey end to end. And underpinning that, having a tech stack that allows you to execute with speed, agility, and innovation, as Raj said at the beginning. So here on the slide, you see the Customer 360 Truth platform from Salesforce, a myriad of applications and tools and products to help manage that customer journey end to end. To really simplify it, we can break it down into 3 segments. We can break it down into the acquire phase, transact, and then grow. So in the acquire phase, the things that are kind of relevant are using a Heroku mobile experience platform to build a banking app that allows an amazing experience and keeps customers in the app for as long as possible. A number of digital marketing tools, which we'll talk more about later, that allow you to personalize and target that segment of one. And also our commerce offering to build marketplaces of your bank's products and services and complement that with third-party fintech products and services to provide a rounded suite of offerings to your customers. In that middle phase, speed is absolutely critical. New10, as an example, are able to make a decision and announce a decision to an SME business owner in under 15 minutes around whether they are approved for a loan. So when they are identified as a lead, it's really important to pre-qualify their eligibility for a product. Then reach that decision quickly by having all of the pricing and decisioning tools tightly integrated or built on the platform itself. Onboarding must be seamless using biometrics and the latest ID and V techniques. And then origination must happen at rapid speed. So all of the data that's collected in Salesforce is straight through processed into Mambu to open an account seamlessly, and providing great customer experience, great customer service and self-service throughout that journey end to end. And finally, the grow piece. All of that data that's been collected across the journey allows you to build that enriched 360 view. And with that, you can then improve and enhance your marketing journeys to improve the level of targeting and personalization, but also inform your sales and service agents with the next best action, the recommendation for the next product that they might want to offer that customer. Those insights and that data can also be shared to the customer as part of a premium service and shared with third parties as we start to break into the realms of open finance and share data across organizations to create exciting new business models and exciting new propositions for customers. So all of that happens within the world of Salesforce, and then we combine that with the powerful capabilities of Mambu's composable banking platform.
Thanks, Ryan. That was very insightful. James, how do you see this in your world?
Yes, so I think when you're looking to launch propositions, the key thing is being able to learn and iterate very quickly. So all of the architecture within your entire stack needs to be extremely responsive. So at Mambu, we really kind of look at achieving that agility through sort of two key issues. The first of all is what we call composable banking. Now, just to give you an illustration of that, historically, a lot of the time what you would be provided is these very monolithic end-to-end solutions, which is great when you launch, but unfortunately the world doesn't stay still. It moves on, and I think the one thing that we've learned is, if anything, the world is an exceptionally uncertain place. So what you need to do is bake into your business the ability to change rapidly. So rather than having a monolithic approach, we suggest that people need to be selecting best of breed components that by default sort of interoperate and are very open in their communication. So you can essentially build the organization that you want to be using these best of breed technologies, taking Mambu, taking Salesforce, taking the multitude of fantastic fintechs out there to have a proposition that really is unique. And furthermore, when the world changes again, as it surely will, you're able to add and substitute components to that technology stack very quickly, so you can evolve and iterate your product and your offering in the market as you get that real-time feedback through your system of engagement, through the tooling that Ryan talked about. The second thing that we talk about is really the power of SaaS. Now, I suppose really a bit of a hat tip historically to Salesforce here, because they essentially created the segment, but Mambu is essentially taken a lot of the founding principles of Salesforce, and we've extended that into core banking. So a couple of those key points are, first of all, that we embrace sort of a configuration over a customization approach. So that means that there's never any customization of the code. You're never essentially engineering yourself into a cul-de-sac. And by using that configuration, not customization, our product factory means that even a business level user can create and deploy a new financial product once they're trained in as quickly as 10 minutes. So, if you look at banking of 10 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, the process of even creating and launching a new financial product would take a great deal of coding that would need to be tested, and even the system itself on that day of launch would need to be taken down and then put back up again. So, we can go through essentially a wizard and launch that product in, essentially the time it takes to make a cup of coffee.
Thanks, James. Jaideep, how do you see all the pieces of the puzzle come together finally?
Sure, thanks, Raj, and thanks for having me on this really exciting topic. So if you just go back to the beginning on the topic about having a differentiation of the banking experiences for the customer segment of one, I believe Ryan put that nicely in terms of three key attributes: agility, speed, and innovation. I would just build on top of that. This is all about business agility, business, the speed to launch business products, or banking products in this particular case, and the business innovation. The crowded space that you alluded to earlier, 20 million customers being onboarded in this last calendar year, 2019, in UK on neo-banking platform, it is a significant challenge for the new entrants to go and accept and respond to. And the only way they could respond is by ensuring that they really do have the differentiation in the way they define and launch their products and services, and the way they engage the customer. Now, Ryan and James both put beautifully on how Salesforce and Mambu respond to those needs in an absolutely immaculate manner. The way these platforms really bring all those components to push for the business agility, push for the business innovation on ground. There is a slightly more all-encompassing thing about how do you put some other aspects. While Salesforce and Mambu covers most of the aspects that you talk about, there are some little patterns that you'll see getting shared across most of the customer segments that you're targeting and most of the experiences that you're going to build at the end of the day. Whether you are originating the deposit accounts and loan accounts, whether you are doing this for mass affluent customers versus emerging affluent customers versus somebody else, there will be some small patterns which, as a bank, one needs to identify and ensure that they are covered as a part of the digital banking architecture. Now, what we define it as a mosaic, the mosaic in a very simple term is a functional architecture. Some of the functional attributes which are repeatable in nature, and depending upon which customer segment you are going after, most of them are going to be reusable to a significant extent. What you need, though, is an ability to put these functional components, or as we define them as tiles, the functional tiles together. The more seamlessly you are able to put them together, the more effective you can be in terms of bringing the agility, speed, and the innovation on ground. Now, James also talked about how Mambu supports product definitions or micro-product definitions in a matter of few minutes. Ryan talked about how do you extend that all the way up to the customer experience, whether it is the engagement, the CRM, the likes of next best action, and so on and so forth. There are small components like payments, your KYC providers, your credit bureaus. There could be one, there could be many, depending upon what you want to launch in the market and differentiate yourself against. What you need at the end of the day is to have some basic principles, like having an API first, or at times even API only strategy, or a cloud native strategy, or a combination of all this, that really helps you put these functional components together in a very short span of time, which gives you all the more space, time, and energy to focus on how are you going to engage your customers from the business strategy perspective, without really worrying about how do you achieve that using the functional and the technology component. So to summarize from my perspective, the best way to bring all these two components together is to think about it as a mosaic. Think about your functional components first and how they're going to impact, in a very differentiated manner to acquire and retain your customer, and leave this to, some very powerful platforms like Salesforce and Mambu to complete the story in a very short span of time. Raj?
Thanks, Jaideep and Ryan and James for that point of view. Very insightful. Really demystified, the nuances of setting up a digital bank. With that, we'll now move on to a quick roundtable discussion. First question is, where do you typically start in attacking the segment of one? Ryan?
Thank you, Raj. So the way we think about this is both in terms of how you target a new prospect and then how you engage an existing customer. And there is some overlap in terms of the techniques for doing both. But with a new prospect, it's often pretty hard to drive that level of personalization if you don't have an existing relationship. So we have a number of tools which I alluded to at the beginning, which I'll just double click on now, that allow you to do that. So firstly, it's all around building the right audiences. So if I'm a new bank and I want to target a millennial customer base, well, maybe I would tap into our data management platform and start to profile Financial Times subscribers that live in London that are between the age of 18 and 35 years old. And then once I've built that audience, I could push adverts to those subscribers as they're reading the newspaper online and make them aware of a current account offering or an ISA or a savings product that I think fits that segment pretty well. Then it's about tracking interactions. So if one of those millennials has visited the website and is looking at your mortgage product, and maybe they've looked at it 5 times in the last 30 days, and on each of those visits they've stayed for longer than 5 minutes, and we know that they aren't pre-approved or haven't been eligible yet for that mortgage product. There are some rich data points there that might inform that next stage of the customer journey and how you nurture them. And then finally, at a more macro level, we have a set of analytics tools to take not just the data sets that I just described, but also third-party data sets from Google Analytics, from Facebook, from LinkedIn, from any other marketing source, and really get deeper insight on what product or what campaign is working for what customer segment on what channel, so that you can continually kind of optimize your ad spend and the level of personalization. So there's a lot of stuff there that you can do for a new prospect. But then for an existing customer, if I'm using Salesforce and Mambu and I have the data model tightly integrated, then I've got a gold mine of data around a client's financial goals, their transaction history, what products and services that they currently use, what are their borrowing limits, what is their risk appetite. So I can combine all of that data set with the first one and drive even more personalization. And I think where this goes eventually is, it's not just about driving personalization to the segment of one in terms of a message or an offer, but actually in real time starting to configure the product so that the fee structure or the rate for that particular individual is almost personalized to them based on based on what you know about them and based on their financial goals. And that becomes very possible when you start to look at our commerce capabilities and how we can sort of package and price products in real time.
James?
Great, thanks Raj. So, I mean, certainly this question is more focused, at least on the surface, to Ryan, and it's very much around the system of engagement and understanding your customer. But from an architectural standpoint, you really need all of the systems or all of the components to be responsive, to be real time, to communicate and expose all of their functionality via API. Because ultimately, if you can understand what this segment of one is and what they want, but you're unable to be responsive and offer them product at the same speed, it all becomes completely redundant. So, Mambu by design is entirely API driven. All of the functionality within our core, whether it's our sort of product creation or anything within the system, it's all exposed via API. So, for example, in a scenario that Ryan described, if the real-time analytics identified that a particular loan or a particular customer demographic would match, then we can create, or a product can be created, as I described. I mean, it could be done manually in that sort of 8 to 10 minute frame, or it could be done via API in the speed at which computers communicate. I think some of the examples of actually Salesforce and Mambu working together, like Oak North, where they can create products for an audience of one. In fact, Oak North is a perfect example where they have a digitized experience, but they also have a lot of direct engagement with their staff, and they're able to create and tailor a loan product that is specific for each individual organization. So that's an SME lending scenario.
Thanks, James. Jaydeep?
Sure, Roger. So, Ryan and James covered this quite very well. I'm just going to add a little more on top of that. So, if you're a neobank, the customer segment of one is going to be targeted through 2 major aspects. One, how do you define the differentiation in the product and the service that you're offering to that particular segment of one? That is one. And the second is, how do you treat or how do you respond when that customer segment really approaches you and you're trying to acquire that customer on ground? And Ryan alluded to multiple ways by which you can use the the additional data, the likes of Facebook, Google, and other social media platforms, to sort of, really differentiate the way you're going to decide whether it is origination or anything else as a part of the onboarding process, and really sort of extend that experience of customer segment of one. I'm just going to add a little more color to this, that the existing banks who are probably locked up into the legacy setup and wanting to do all this, but are really not sure about how to go about it. There are some really beautiful architectural patterns which are available. There are multiple successful examples of that transformation, what we call as a dual core strategy. So for some reasons you're not able to come out of your legacy setup, you can stay with that. You can really have your digital first experience right from the customer engagement all the way up to the product definition that James talked about, and really build that as a parallel stack with some really simple pipe that connects both the old as well as the new system as a part of the dual core strategy. But what it gives you the ability is to leverage the data which you already carry. I mean, the traditional banks always do have this advantage of having a good amount of their own customer data, which is at times lost because perhaps they don't know how to leverage that to their advantage. But by establishing the digital stack, the way we have been talking about on this webinar today, they can amplify their intelligence from the data strategy. Ryan talked about how Salesforce and Einstein can really bring the very actionable insights in a very quick time period as such. And they have at times an added advantage of their existing data to sort of support the customer segmentation of one. That's where they can get started, in my opinion.
Thanks, Jaideep. Now let's talk about the typical timelines involved in building a solution from scratch. Why don't we start with you, James, this time?
Thanks, Raj. So I think when people talk about the speed at which things can be delivered, it's really important to start breaking that down so people can see it at a component level. So typically our customers are launching banks from contract signature to production in speeds of sort of 6 to 9 months. But that's really the entire organization, and that's made possible by this sort of API first SaaS approach. But I suppose at a micro level within Mambu, I mean, I used the analogy before. I'm sorry, I'm going to get my money's worth out of it again. Is we can create an instance of Mambu in 5 minutes. Yeah, the process of then taking that instance and then configuring it to be production ready to a specific bank or lender's requirements takes, I suppose, 6 to 8 weeks. And that 6 to 8 week time frame actually includes the time it takes for us to fully enable the customer. Because one of our key objectives, in making the technology very simple and accessible, is we actually want the customer to be the master. Just as Salesforce will often have super users, we have Mambu champions. So within that 6 weeks period, they no longer need Mambu. They're fully self-sufficient, and they've got their bank core production ready and off to go.
Brilliant, Ryan.
Yeah, just to add to what James said, really, once work is underway on defining the kind of back end with Mambu, the Salesforce exists at the front end as a system of engagement, clearly, and we're both cloud platforms. We're sort of famed for our speed of delivery, time to market. Where Salesforce has gone in the last 4 to 5 years to accelerate that even faster has been with an industry cloud strategy. So we announced our financial services cloud just under 5 years ago now, and what that does is takes the standard Salesforce platform, but then builds some components on top that are really accelerators to speed up the implementation process. So the underlying data model and the workflows are all ready for a bank to use out of the box. So one example was a new set of workflows that we announced in our winter release, which was February earlier this year, and what we announced was a workflow for mortgages. So all of the steps and the process that needs to exist to onboard a mortgage customer, and then trigger the origination workflow is all now readily available out of the box, and then ready to integrate with Mambu. So as James said, we've helped new banks, new entrants into this space go live in under 9 months. I think New 10 is a great example of that. From sprint zero to actually going live was almost 9 months on the nose, and we have many other customers that would share similar results to that as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Jaydeep, your views?
Totally agree with James and Ryan. I'm going to put the onus back onto the bank themselves, whether they are ready for this kind of phase or not. But if a bank staff, and Fintechs have a very clear roadmap in terms of customer segmentation, their product definition, and things like that. Mambu and Salesforce both bring a lot of ready-made out-of-the-box components that can go live within weeks. And whatever remaining integration that you may need, more around the likes of payments or KYCs or the credit bureaus and stuff like that. Most of them are API enabled, so they can be integrated in a matter of few weeks. There is an interesting pattern that we often see with the neobanks that they essentially start with some kind of minimal viable product. There could be a friend and family kind of release, a bit of a pilot before they go live in production. And a lot of it is obviously aligned to their licensing process as well in parallel. But through the entire course of MVP to production, anywhere between 6 to 9 months is absolutely doable. I just want to underscore that the technology solution, the platform solution, is not really is on the critical path for this goal line. It is the other aspects that I talked about that may delay, if at all, that is the case.
Thanks, Jaydeep. That's a significant shift in paradigm, right? I mean, to have seen over the last 2 decades of banks taking months and years to get the bank up and running, to come to a point where we can set up a bank and go live in less than 9 months is a significant change. And to the last question now, why is this combination so powerful, Mambu and Salesforce? James?
Yes, so I think there's a couple of things I'd call out, actually, just to pick up off of your comment around the incredible distance that the industry has come in recent industry, and I think it's down to probably a number of factors. Obviously, the availability of technology that's sort of API ready and SaaS very fast to market, but also people are approaching projects in a far more agile way. So I think that very much informs the technology choice of vendors like Mambu. Obviously, there needs to be that progressive approach within the market to want to adopt these technologies and try new things. And I think it's really, if you look at some key things that have happened within the UK that have actually driven the positive adoption of these new working practices and SaaS technologies like Mambu, we've had things like the regulated, obviously, banking and financial services is heavily regulated. The UK regulators have been very progressive and open-minded in terms of trying to find ways to make SaaS technology, regulated SaaS technology, something that they support. In terms of how Mambu and Salesforce make a great combination, I mean, look, you've essentially got the only SaaS core banking provider, and you've got the organization that pioneered SaaS a number of years ago. So I think the synergies between our organizations are self-evident. You've got 2 companies that fundamentally believe very similar things in terms of how the wider community, how our customers can be supported, and the fact that we collaborate and we, by design, are very open in our architectures. It makes putting the 2 together just something that's very natural.
Thanks, James. Ryan?
Yeah, I agree. I think at the beginning we touched on the importance of having two systems tightly integrated that can provide that single view of customer and that seamless customer journey. And then we talked about the execution of making sure that speed, agility, and innovation are sort of differentiators. And so I think we've touched on speed in kind of the last question. In terms of agility, the landscape is becoming more and more dynamic as these challenger banks begin to mature. They're all targeting new geographies, new customer segments. They want a foothold in retail as well as business banking, and as they become more global, they have to comply with more regulation. So agility is obviously increasingly important. And I think the sort of the proof in that has been quite recently with the whole situation around COVID-19, the government lending schemes that were kind of announced and almost went live overnight. We've had a number of our customers actually stand up kind of new lending products and an entirely new loan origination process in less than 2 weeks, which is rapid. And in addition to that, we've had whole workforces needing to go from kind of office location to working from home, which has massive implications for customer service. And if you think about an agent being able to log in on a cloud-based platform, see all of the customer data, and then either use an IP connection or maybe another device that they have to then start making or receiving customer calls, and then have their leadership team actually be able to remotely see a set of data and some analytics around customer sentiment, what sort of cases are being raised, how is employee productivity working in that new environment, has been tremendously powerful. And I think that a lot of these new players in financial services that have gone 100% cloud, like Oak North, for example, will have been able to have pivot much quicker than those traditional players that have big contact centers and some legacy technology that's harder to have that provide that agility. And then finally on innovation, from Salesforce perspective, we release 3 times a year, and so within that we are always looking to beef up and extend our capabilities around managing data, because that's critically important to the success. And we acquired MuleSoft and we acquired Tableau, and so connecting to data more easily and making sure integration works, but then also turning that data into intelligence is increasingly important. So you start to see those products become more embedded across the portfolio. And then, we're doubling down on new workflows and processes, which I touched on within our financial services cloud. And we double down on new channels as well, as customer preferences change and they want to be, marketed to or serviced through WhatsApp or through Snapchat or through Instagram. We need to make, that available through our platform, as well as lots of other features and improvements and kind of bug fixes and things like that we do within each release as well. So, as a cloud platform, it is all around speed, it's around agility, and it's around innovation, and then building that single view of customer and allowing that seamless journey end to end.
Thanks, Ryan. JD?
Sure. So I'm just going to go back to the previous question that I think the customer segmentation of one, we need 2 major areas to be covered. Is your customer experience really that differentiated? Are you really targeting individuals into a customer segment of one, and the whole gamut of things that Ryan described so very well? And second, are your products and the entire services that you're going to offer as a bank are differentiated or not? And it's one single end-to-end view. They're not in a disjointed views as such. And if you need to sort of implement this in no time, you need the pioneers of SaaS as a model, and you need somebody who's basically cloud native, API first kind of a core system on ground, which is why the combination is so very important and extremely viable.
Thank you, Jaideep, James, and Ryan. That wraps up our roundtable discussion for today. And there's always this. Thanks, James. Thanks, Ryan, again. There's always this one additional question that we get. How do I get started? In short, you always start with your customer and how best you can service these needs. Now at Persistent, what we've done is we've formalized our approach based on several of our customer engagements in the past. And we call it the Persistent Digital Greenhouse. Now, what it does is that it brings all the right stakeholders together from the banks, from the partners like Salesforce and Mambu and Persistent. And we run a highly collaborative and design thinking-led workshop. And what it does is that it really helps you bring your vision, your initial roadmap, your technology ideas and choices that you're exploring, all of them on a single canvas, and help you see how the digital bank can start from scratch. That's really the intent of the whole discussion today. With that, thank you all very much for joining us today. Please do reach out to any of us, and we will help you accelerate your journey. I would also like to thank our speakers today, Ryan, James, and Jaideep. It was a very insightful discussion. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.